Hey guys, Jess here with the Dissociated Press. Today I am going to be doing a story time type thing, and I recently learned that these are super popular on YouTube, which means I'm really behind the times, and also I live in a cave, which we already knew. But anyway, today I'm going to be talking about what it was like to visit my mom in prison when I was a little kid. This is something I really don't talk about that often, just because most of my memories are incredibly fragmented, and also it makes people super uncomfortable because they can't relate. And normally I'm all about educational discomfort, which is actually a great term for it. But, like I said, people can't relate, and it's just kind of a weird experience because they don't know what to say, and yeah. So our story begins when I was a newborn. Literally, I was born in my grandmother's house, and I lived there with my mother and grandmother for many years, actually. Well, at least until I was 8. So I first became aware that my mother had a drinking problem, or, let's call a spade a spade. She's a bipolar alcoholic, so thanks for the bipolar disorder. But I'm living with it. So I became aware of that problem, and she had multiple DUIs and child endangerment charges, child neglect, driving without a license, whole bunch of stuff. And eventually it culminated in her getting really drunk one night and beating the hell out of my grandmother. I found out probably about 5 or 6 years ago that I was there that night and had blocked it out. I had some memories of something, like some arrest, the police coming into the house and everything, but didn't connect the dots. And my first reaction was, I'm not repressing anything, what are you talking about? That's crazy. And then I realized how silly that was, how ridiculous, because when you repress something, you typically don't remember it. That's kind of like the whole point, right? She eventually, that's when I was 7, and when I was 8, she ended up being sent to a state correctional facility that was about 3 hours away from my hometown where I lived. And twice a month on Saturdays, one of my aunts would take me down to visit her. We'd make that road trip. Sometimes my other aunt, who came back to live with me and eventually became my legal guardian, she would go with me. My great aunt, who I loved dearly and became one of my parents essentially, would come with. And having her with me was wonderful. And I'm so grateful that she was willing to make the trip and be there for support. Because as an 8-year-old, how the hell do you process that? How do you process, oh, what are you doing this weekend, Jess? Or, Jessica was my legal name back in the day. I changed it. Oh, I'm going to visit my mom in prison. Like, no, you don't say that. So I felt very alienated from my peers. Didn't have any therapy. No one talked about it. And it messed me up in a lot of ways that I didn't realize until I got older. And I realized, pro tip, I'm not going to tell anyone how to parent, but you probably shouldn't take your kid to a prison if you can help it, because it's not a great place for kids. So here's what it was like. We would start out very early in the morning, I don't know, like 5, 6. I remember it being still dark, and I resented the hell out of it because I did not want to get up that early and sit in a car. And I would hang out in the back of my aunt's station wagon and just kind of look through the window up at the sky, take a nap, do whatever. It was a 3-hour trip, and that's a long time for a kid. So we get there, and we would roll up through the gates after doing the identification thing. You guys have probably seen a prison show, you know how it works. So that part's at least accurate. We would get through the gates, we would park, we would go up to almost like this little booth outside, and we would have to give photo ID. I didn't because I was a little kid, and this was the 90s. I don't know what the procedures are like now, but everybody else would have to give photo ID, the license plate, make, model, color of the car. I guess in case you wanted to break somebody out, Don't know. Probably that's the reason. And then after all that, we would go inside to this waiting room, and my memories of it are probably, I know they're inaccurate, at least this part. I remember the room being very large, white. There was a door off to the left when you came in. There was like a little desk, and the door had that wired glass, and that was the door into the visiting area. But the waiting room itself had those really hard orange plastic chairs that zap you like every time you sit down or every time you move. I remember they were worn smooth at the sides, and I would always rub my hand across that, I guess, to calm myself. I remember how the room smelled. It was stale air. It smelled a lot like flat Pepsi, and I don't know why I remember that detail, but you know, childhood memory is a funny thing. So you just wait. And then the CO, the correctional officer, would come to the door, open it up. I'd get sent in by myself, and there my mother would be in her orange jumpsuit. Yes, they are actually orange. That's not made up. Everyone had bad haircuts. I remember that, which makes sense. I mean, you're not gonna go to like a fancy salon when you're in prison. You cut your own hair. And I'd sit down and we'd make small talk. Before every trip, my grandmother would give me a little Ziploc baggie of quarters so I could get snacks or whatever. They had vending machines. The inmates weren't supposed to get up from the tables. They were like long cafeteria tables, like the gray plastic ones with the ugly specks. So I would get up and I would get coffee out of the machine for her in a styrofoam cup. And the coffee was never ever fresh. It was always kind of gloppy and, you know, and I burned myself on that many a time. And I was just barely tall enough to reach that. We would sometimes play games. I remember the game Upwards. I was really always into word games, but that was like the thing when I was like 8, 9 years old. And we would play that. And it's like Scrabble, but you stack the tiles. And so if somebody plays cat, you can put an H on it, make hat. Don't know if there's scoring rules, but anyway, I digress. One time I decided, I don't know, that I wanted to make like the world's tallest tower of these tiles. So I did, and of course it went toppling over, and the inmates sitting, you know, a decent distance away at the next table, it went scattering across over to her, and she helped us gather it up. And we all got yelled at by the CO because we weren't supposed to talk to each other. It's funny that I'm smiling while I'm talking about this. Another thing I remember is kind of the stale, not unpleasant or like BO, but the stale scent of bodies that hadn't been washed properly. I imagine they give you very low quality soap, showers are unpleasant. That's just kind of one of those sensory memories that I have. I also remember looking out the window across from where I was sitting and seeing a big window with wired glass, and I could look out into the prison yard, like the rec yard, that kind of thing. They had the stereotypical big chain link fence with barbed wire on top, you know, all that. So when I was done with visiting my mother, I think it was only like 20-30 minutes, I can't remember. I'd go back out to the waiting room, wait with whatever relative had come with me. The other one would go in and have a visit with my mother, and then we would leave. And on the way back, we usually stopped at, like there was an outlet mall on the way back, so we'd stop there. There was this toy store called KB Toys, and again, I'm probably dating myself really badly here, because I don't think it's around anymore, and I think it closed like 10 years ago or something. Anyway, we would stop there. Sometimes I'd get a little present, you know, just little things to cheer me up after this thing that I had gone through, because no one likes visiting a prison, let alone a kid. So I remember one time, and these were really cool. These were like the thing to have when Nerf was really big when I was a kid, like mid-90s. They had these things, they were like big, kind of like an oval, it looked like a UFO a little bit. And there was this thing where you put in these little circular discs, little foam discs, so you wouldn't like put an eye out. And you would pull the trigger and they go, you know. So we got 2 of those, and my guardian aunt and I would, you know, have little battles around grandma's house with it. So that was fun. So I do have some happy memories. It's not like my childhood was all doom and gloom. I mean, it sucked as a whole. If I look back at all the things that happened and all the things I saw and experienced, it sucked, which you would expect. But, you know, we did this song and dance for 2 years when my mother was released, but what happened after that is a whole different story for another day. This video is already, oh my god, like 11 minutes. But I wanted to share that with you guys because it's something I don't talk about a lot. It's something that's difficult to put into words. So thank you for watching and enduring this. I hope it was not necessarily eye-opening. I'm not gonna be like arrogant enough to think, oh, it was eye-opening, but I hope it was interesting for you and maybe you learned a thing or two. You know, I really like the idea of sharing personal experiences with people because that's the best way to learn. Listen to each other. Gonna climb off my soapbox now and end the video. Again, thanks for watching. Check out the blog and the Facebook page. I will link it in the, I guess, description. Sorry, I'm old, okay? I'm turning 97 in March. But yeah, thank you, and I hope you have a fantastic week.